We are continuing discussion on molecular basis of inheritance, and the specific topic that I am going to discuss in this particular video would be the technique of DNA fingerprinting. So what we will do is that we will try to understand the core and the basic concepts in a very simple language. So I will try to simplify the thing in as simple as language as I can, because this is for the first time during our study in biology that we are actually studying the molecular basis of inheritance, and therefore the complicated concepts must be simplified in a language that are easily understandable. That has been our endeavor. This is what I have tried to do throughout the discussion on this chapter and will continue to do so. Now, in this particular technique, let me give you a terms. First and foremost, the first point would be that I would like to call DNA fingerprinting by the term which is DNA profiling. So I am replacing this word by another word which is DNA profiling. Now what does it mean? So everybody knows what is a profile. So a certain person has a particular profile. So you have a graduation degree, a post-graduation degree, whatever it is that makes up your profile. So this is how we will make a profile of a DNA sample. So a DNA sample has been given to me and certain characteristics have been selected by me, and I am looking at the peculiarities in these selected characters in the given sample of DNA. I am documenting them, I am making a record of them, and therefore I am keeping or making a DNA profile of this particular given sample of DNA molecule. That would be DNA profiling or DNA fingerprinting in very simple words. I hope you got the idea. Now the next question obviously coming into your mind is that, sir, why are you trying to do this? So my basic aim is to establish in most cases what is called as a positive identity. Now let me explain it. So let us write it down first. So why I am making a profile of a DNA sample? Because with the help of this profile, I hope to establish a positive identity. Now let me give you a hypothetical example here. So what has happened is that the police has come to you, you being a forensic pathologist, and you have been asked by the police to assist them in investigation of a crime scene. So you go to the crime scene with the police, and police show you a sample of some body fluid and it looks like blood, and police says that this sample probably belongs to the accused, who is unfortunately absconding. So I hope you understand the situation. So first you establish that yes, this sample is actually blood, and then you isolate certain cells from this blood sample and then isolate DNA from them. Now please understand, you will not be able to do this from the mature red blood cells. You know that mature RBCs do not contain DNA. So I hope you understand this. So what you have done is that from this sample you have isolated certain cells, and from these cells you have isolated DNA in pure form. You know that how DNA is to be isolated, and if the sample is not adequate, you can amplify DNA. So in the chapter on biotechnology, we will understand a very powerful technique which is called as polymerase chain reaction. So we will read about polymerase chain reaction. This polymerase chain reaction is used to amplify DNA. So that means even if this blood stain, let us say it is simply a speck, it is just a stain and it is months old, and even if you get only one or few cells, that DNA would be enough, because you can amplify the given DNA molecule millions and billions of times by this powerful technique to make it adequate for making a profile. So if it is adequate, there is no need to do the PCR technique. If it is not adequate, then you can amplify the given sample by the technique which is called as polymerase chain reaction, and then it would be easy. Now that means you have isolated this DNA and you have studied these peculiarities that I will speak about in the later part of this particular video, and you record these peculiarities of the characteristics in this particular sample of DNA, and you make a DNA profile of this given sample of DNA, and you store it in your database in a computer. You know that bioinformatics is a very, very interesting branch that has recently developed because of all this work that has been done in sequencing the DNA. So you know about bioinformatics. So this is what you have done. So suppose this person who is accused is get caught at a later date, then you can take a DNA sample from this person, make a profile and match these profile. So you will be able to incriminate this person, or you can actually let him go. So this is how this thing is going to come to your advantage. This is one of the very important applications in forensic science of DNA fingerprinting. And another application would be paternity disputes. Paternity disputes, you will use DNA fingerprinting to establish the paternities. Now, just to take the point further, let me tell you that the first scientist, the first person who pioneered this technique, actually used this technique in particular murder trial in United Kingdom. So this person was Alec Jeffreys. This is in United Kingdom. He used DNA fingerprinting to identify a particular accused in a murder trial in United Kingdom. So this is an important thing. Again, you get an example that how it can be used. So I hope now we have a fair idea about this word, that what exactly is DNA fingerprinting, and more importantly, what we are trying to achieve here, what is our aim. So I hope this thing is absolutely clear. Now it will be prudent at this part to study the minimum basic things here. Now please understand, your NCERT says that 99.9% of DNA is identical amongst all living beings. So we are talking between 8 to 9 billion people, and 99.9% of DNA is identical. So look at this. It is a very, 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 very startling number. 99.9% of DNA is identical. Then your NCERT says that look at your class. Now suppose it is a class of 50 students, you will see 15 varieties. You will see 50 variations. So all of them will be slightly different from each other. Even the identical twins may not be identical really. You may be able to distinguish if you happen to know them for a long period of time. You must be knowing that what I am trying to say. So that means this is just a simple class. You look at the entire world, no two individuals are alike. So that means this difference in only 0.1% of our DNA makes us unique. We are truly unique. All billions of us are truly unique. Now, one way of establishing a positive identity would be to study this entire 0.1 DNA. Obviously, DNA is made up of nucleotides. This is what genetic code is. And you know that you have sequenced this DNA in the human genome sequence. So you can go about establishing a positive identity by studying the entire 0.1% of DNA. But this 0.1% of what? This is 3.6 billion base pairs. So we are talking of 3.6 billion base pairs. Now this is a huge number. So 0.1% of 3.6 billion is a huge number. And what we are trying to say that in DNA fingerprinting, there is no need of going for the entire thing. You just pick and choose certain number of characters. If you are able to establish peculiarities in 15 to 20 characters that we will talk about later in this particular video, it will be sufficient to establish a positive identity that would be sufficient to make a person unique out of the pool of billions of people. So that means it is rather a crude technique. Instead of genome sequencing, you are just looking at the certain number of peculiarities, and this you can easily understand, be done very rapidly. And this is the essence of it. This is a big advantage. You can establish a positive identity without any doubt, without a need to study the entire unique DNA that makes us unique. I hope this thing is again absolutely clear. The second important thing to understand is that again in the salient feature of the human genome tells me that around 2% of DNA, it is actually less than 2% of DNA codes for protein. Now this is very, very amazing. So that means we are talking of 3.6 billion base pairs in the genomic DNA, and we are saying that only around 2% of it codes for DNA. Our understanding was that DNA should be made up of genes, or genes are segments of DNA, and these genes would be expressed as protein, as you have seen during the discussion in the earlier parts of this chapter. But this is a very, very unusual finding that 2% of this actually codes for proteins. So what about the other 98%? So what about the other 98%? Obviously, it does not code for any protein. So initially, people used to call it as junk DNA. What use is it then? What is the use of this particular DNA? Because we think that DNA should only code for protein. If it is not coding for protein, then it should be junk. But please understand, now we are understanding the importance of this part of the DNA as well. At least you will appreciate that it does have a structural role and it is inherited. So please remember, this junk DNA definitely has structural role. It makes up the structure of your DNA, and like other DNA, it is also inherited. So it is also inherited. It is very important to understand that this is not junk. Now we are understanding a lot about non-coding RNAs, the different methods by which gene expressions are regulated, and it is shedding new lights on the role of the remaining part of the DNA. So it is not entirely junk, but because the term has been in vogue, so I am using it liberally here. So this, what is the specularity of this 98% DNA? So the next thing your NCERT says that this junk DNA, I am sorry to use this word, but because I am saying that this actually catches the imagination of people, I am using it. So what happens with this junk DNA is that around 50% of it, around 50% of this junk DNA is made up of repetitive sequences. This is the next point that the NCERT discusses. So this is made up of repetitive sequences. So if you isolate DNA, you do gravity assisted density ultracentrifugation, then what is going to happen? What is going to happen? There would be different peaks. The genomic DNA will be in a different peak, and this particular repetitive sequence would be in a different peak, and we have to work with this repetitive DNA. So in our DNA fingerprinting, we will be working with the repetitive DNA, and during ultracentrifugation, it will form a separate peak. And I know that this is where the repetitive DNA is lying. So I will be using the repetitive sequences. Now, what exactly can we see about these repetitive sequences? So to understand further the repetitive sequence, let me give you an example. So on a particular chromosome in the human genome, there is a sequence which is famously called as TCAT. Is called as TCAT. It is actually TCAT. Now please appreciate that this would be a double-stranded DNA. So there would be a base pair. This T will base pair with A on the complementary strand. But we are taking the sequence on a particular strand, a single strand of the double-stranded DNA, and this gets repeated. So it is TCAT, TCAT, and TCAT, 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 TCAT. You can see that this is a repeat sequence. So this is what is meant by the repetitive sequence, that these base pairs, they are getting repeated. Please remember that DNA is nothing but a sequence of deoxyribonucleotides. So I hope this is absolutely clear. Now when we classify these repetitive sequences, so what we are seeing is that these repetitive sequences can be of different types. They can be of different types. So the repetitive sequences can be of different types, and they may be at one location, as you had seen in TCAT, TACT, one after another, they were getting repeated. They were present at the same location, or they may be scattered throughout the genome. So if they are scattered throughout the genome, we will call these as interspersed. So this is interspersed. So I hope you understand the word, what exactly is meant by interspersed. So these are the repeats that are not present at one place. They are scattered throughout the genome. And in higher classes, you will know that there are some things which are called as lines, the long interspersed sequences, and the signs, the short interspersed sequences. But let us not bother about this. So just making a remark about it, try to remember that some of the sequences may be interspersed. But as you had seen in the case of TCAT, they were one after the another, and this type of repeat would be called as an antonym to interspersed. It would be called as tandem repeats. So I hope now this term is absolutely clear to everybody that what exactly is a tandem repeat. It is at the same place, one after the another, it is repeated like that. This is a tandem repeat. So we are interested in the technique that I will be telling you about DNA profiling. We will be interested in these tandem repeats. Make note of them. So I hope now you understand what are tandem repeats. Second, now these tandem repeats can be classified into various subclasses. Now this can be, say for example, number one, when I again write TCAT, these are 4 bases. Obviously there would be base pairs. So it is a sequence of 4 bases or base pairs that is getting repeated. So depending on the number of these base or base pairs, there may be a method to classify the tandem repeats into various subclasses. And then the number may be variable. That means there may be a repeat of 3, there may be a repeat of 10, there may be a repeat of 15. So that is also a basis. The size of this particular tandem repeat would be a basis of classification. So if it is very large, we call it as satellite. If it is smaller one, we call it as mini satellite. So we call it as mini satellite, and if it is mini satellite would be 10 to 100. So that means, as you can see, here you are seeing a repeat of 4. So mini satellite would be 10 to 100. So anything less than 10 would be micro satellite, or sometimes called as short tandem repeats. Micro satellite, and sometimes also called as short tandem repeats. But what we are interested in our discussion, because we are what a technique we will be following in DNA profiling, we are interested in these mini satellites. So these are the things that interest me, and I am calling these mini satellites as VNTR. So these mini satellites, I am calling them as VNTR, which means there is what is called as variable number. So let us write number as number, no shortcuts here. Variable number, T means tandem repeats. So the technique that we are going to use in DNA profiling will be utilizing the peculiarities in the VNTRs present on the given sample of DNA. So this is what is going to be used. I hope this term is now absolutely clear. Now, a very, very important concept, a very, very important concept. Now, suppose there is a character. You know, Mendel genetics chapter, what exactly is a character? And let us say that there are 2 contrasting traits for this particular character. Let us say the character is height, and the contrasting traits are tall and dwarf. So you know what exactly is a trait now. So that means tall is also height, dwarf you are also talking about height, but they are the contrasting form of the same character. You know that the thing that would be controlling this would be called as gene, and these genes will be called as alleles of each other. So this is allele 1 and this is allele 2. I hope you have refreshed the memory of these particular words well now. Now please understand, if in a population the least frequent allele has a frequency of 1%, we call this particular character as polymorphic. So that means suppose a gene has at least 2 alleles, and the allele that is least frequent in the population has a minimum frequency of 1%, we will call this gene as polymorphic. So I will repeat it again. A gene is having at least 2 alleles. The at least 2 alleles means that there may be multiple alleles present for a gene. You know this phenomena. And the least frequent one, the one with the least frequency in a population, has a frequency of at least 1%. 1% in stats would be 0.01. This is what your NCERT is saying. We are calling these particular genes as polymorphic. You can derive a definition for characters, and you can derive a definition for VNTRs as well. So this polymorphism means that something which is found in the least number is at least 1% of the population. Then we call this thing as polymorphic, and you can understand that what would be polymorphism in VNTR would mean. I hope this is absolutely clear. Now let us go further. This is very, very important to understand. So that means in your diploid cell there is a pair of homologous chromosome. So suppose there is a allele present here, there is another allele present here. So this can be capital T, capital T. You will call this person as homozygous for this particular trait. It can be capital T or it can be small t. Let us make another pair. So somebody has capital T, small t. You call this person as heterozygous, and another person has small t, and you are again calling it as homozygous recessive. And you know that these will be inherited. Now please understand that V and TRs are also a part of DNA. They are also made up of nucleotides. Now this is very, very important to understand, and they will be present similar to the alleles and will be inherited. Because what is the sequence here would be the sequence that will be present here as well. This is very, very clearly understood. So that means we will use the word VNTR alleles for them. That is what I was telling you, that this is not junk DNA. It is actually inherited. Please try to understand. So this VNTR may not code for a protein, but they would be present on the homologous chromosome. You know that the sequence would be same and they will be inherited as alleles, and you will see polymorphism here. Now I hope this is absolutely clear. So you will see a large amount of variability for a very simple reason. If a part of DNA does code for a protein and there is a mutation, then it will be reflected in a phenotype, and it will be available for natural selection. Nature may eliminate it from the gene pool of the population. But please try to understand, this does not code for a protein. It is not going to reflect or affect a phenotype, and therefore any change in these VNTR alleles is not going to be subjected to the natural selection and would not be selected against. And during the period of time, they are going to keep on accumulating within the genome of the human beings and would make this VNTR locus polymorphic. I hope this thing is absolutely clear, that why there is polymorphism in VNTRs. I hope this is absolutely clear. So now this is a very, very important point. Again, I am telling you that these VNTR loci are actually functioning as VNTR alleles. I am saying because they are not coding for a protein and hence not affecting a phenotype, are not subjected to the natural selection and therefore will not be selected against. And any mutation that occurs in this part of the DNA would persist in the genome and therefore will make this particular locus highly polymorphic. I hope this thing is absolutely clear. Now carrying this further, now this is the flow of your NCERT textbook. Now I will advise you to read the NCERT textbook. Now you will understand it. Now please one more thing. So because I told you that in DNA profiling I do not need to match the all things. I just need 10 to 15 VNTRs. They will be located on different chromosomes. So I just need to know some limited number of VNTR and I will find out what is the number. See, now why this polymorphism? So there may be another question you may ask, sir, okay, so you say that there are mutations and this would be polymorphism. Why are you saying them VN, variable number? What does it mean? What does it mean? So let us look at a very, very good example. Let me give you a very simple example. So that means, let us say this is chromosome number 6 and this is, let us say, a chromosome from mother. This is the maternal chromosome and this is a paternal chromosome. So this is a paternal chromosome. What we are saying is that a VNTR locus is present on chromosome number 6. So it would be present at the same location on the maternal chromosome as well as on the paternal chromosome, because during recombination, the DNA polymerase, see, once you are repeating something, so as a student, just try to understand when you are repeating something. Say for example, there is a sentence written in your NCERT and that sentence is written 15 times, one after the another. So you will lose the count of that. So if you are reading it for the first time, 15 sentences, one after the other, and suddenly I ask you what was the number of the repeat, you will not be able to retain the count most of the time. I hope you appreciate this very simple analogy that I am making. So enzymes are known to have some error rates and they are also likely to forget. Now what is happening is that when they are replicating the DNA, they may forget something. and that means there would be a variable number. This is, and there may be unequal exchange between these parts of the DNA. So you know that what happens in recombination is that suppose there is a locus A here, there is locus B here, and we say small a and small b, a recombination nodule, and the segment goes here and this segment comes here. You know this is crossing over. But in this particular case, there may be an unequal crossing over. Let us say something like this. Please try to understand this. Please try to understand. What I am saying is that, okay, there is a repeat of 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So this is, if we take STRTCAT repeated 4 times. And this is maternal chromosome. This is paternal chromosome. And again we are saying, let us say that this was the repeat of 4 times. But what I am saying is that during the crossing over in this particular part of the DNA, 2 actually come here, and only 1 goes here. So this is unequal crossing over. This is called as slippage sometimes. And this will lead to the variable number again. And similarly, we are saying that the DNA polymerase may forget, because the number of the repeats may be too many repeats and some may be left, and therefore during replication, during polymerization, there may be mistakes, and that would lead to variable numbers. And please remember, these mistakes are not subjected to natural selection and hence will persist in the genome and make this locus polymorphic. I hope this thing is absolutely clear. Now let us say something like this, that what I have done deliberately is, because you know that it is my choice that what are the variable number of tandem repeats I want to select in my DNA profiling. And let us say that this particular maternal chromosome has a repeat of, let us say 3. So that means a particular sequence is repeated 3 times. Now what we are saying is that this particular DNA has a larger number of repeats. So let us say it has a repeat of 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now look at the number of repeats. These are the variable repeats. Now the DNA adjacent to the repeats is called as the flank DNA. So this flank DNA, I have deliberately chosen this particular locus, because I know that in this particular flank DNA there is a site of restriction enzyme. So you know that restriction enzyme sites will be frequently occurring here. So I have chosen deliberately these things, that say for example, let us say that these are the sites of a particular restriction endonuclease that I know are present in this particular DNA. Let us say another site is present here. Now what I am saying is, let us make it actually homologous, and these 3 things, the circles that you are seeing on DNA, are the sites of restriction enzyme. Now tell me that what happens, suppose the number is 5 here, the number is 5 here, let us say, or it is 3 or 5 here, and let us say that this is a restriction site, and this site would be made up of deoxyribonucleotide. Suppose this is GAATTC, the recognition sequence of EcoR1, and there is a mutation there. So there is a mutation. So on this particular chromosome, there is a mutation here. Now you know that this mutation will not be subjected to the natural selection, but there is no mutation here. And if you now cut with EcoR1, don't you think that this fragment will be much longer than this fragment? Now can you understand the difference between the lengths of the fragment because of number 1, a mutation here in the flank DNA? This can cause the change in the length, or there may be a difference if there is no change in the mutation, and no mutation in the recognition sequence of the restriction enzyme. The number of repeats may be variable, and there would be different sizes of DNA fragments that would result from digestion by this particular restriction enzyme. And now you know that based on their difference in the sizes, they can be separated by gel electrophoresis. And please remember the last point. The thing is that because I know that what is the VNTR, we have already sequenced the genome, for God's sake. We know that what is the sequence we are talking about. So I know that what would be the sequence in the flank DNA, say for example. I know what is this restriction endonuclease enzyme sequence. I can create a probe. I can create a VNTR probe. You know that probe is a single stranded nucleic acid. It is radioactively tagged. I know that suppose this is a sequence, let us say ATGCAT, now something like this. So I know that this is the sequence that is likely to be found. This is what I know will be present on this particular chromosome. So I have made a probe which is TACGTA, and I have radioactively tagged it with making certain nucleotides radioactive so that they help me in identification. And when I separate these fragments and add my VNTR, don't you think that they will hybridize? And they will hybridize on the gel electrophoresis, and by the distance traveled, I will know the size of this particular segment. And now I know that what is the characteristic of this segment in this sample of DNA, and I will make a profile of this particular DNA. I hope this thing is absolutely clear. So these are the basic concepts. I will strongly advise you to read now your NCERT textbook. Read this, and this is a very interesting read. This must be very, very interesting for you. And now what remains is the method or the process, and what we call as RFLP, the restriction fragment length polymorphism analysis. So when I come back in the next part of the video, the easier part, what are the steps of DNA fingerprinting, in a very short video coming up next. Thank you. I hope you are enjoying this. Thank you so much.